and welcome to Dee's Media World. Today I'll be doing my first ever book review on the book Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. At least that's how I think we pronounce her name, so hopefully I don't butcher the names. I'm going to go by the best I can. And the book is actually something I said I was going to review a couple months ago when I had done a book haul. I had this book among others, and I had talked about how if I ever finished this book, I would definitely want to do a review on it. So I finished the book, and now I'm ready to get started on the review. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the description of the book, and then I'll get into it. So I'll read the description really quickly. It's kind of, well, I'm not going to read it. So this book is about kind of like a star-crossed lovers almost sort of thing. The two main characters are Ifemelu and Abinze. That's how I think the names are pronounced. And it says they're young and they're in love. When they depart, military ruled Nigeria for the West. She goes to America and he has to stay in Nigeria. And she deals with sort of the adjustments of coming from an African country to the States. And then he is still in Nigeria, and then he actually gets to go to London, but then ends up back in Nigeria, and a little bit about Nigeria, and a little bit back about what happens between those two characters. The book is mostly told in like flashbacks, or it's kind of like we start off the beginning with where the characters kind of are. Like she's actually already been living in the States. This is not spoilers. This is a non-spoiler review, by the way. The book starts with her already been in the States for like 13 years, and we kind of find out what she's up to, and then we find out a little bit about what he's up to. He's in Nigeria, he's married, he has a kid, and then from then on, then we go into the past, and then how they met, and some of the things like that, up until when she wants to go back to Nigeria. These aren't spoilers. Like the beginning, we find out she's going to move back to Nigeria after living in the States for 13 years. So I decided to break up this book into two categories of awesome things and then the not so awesome things about the book. That's how I wanted to do the review. But I'm going to start off with the awesome things because I love starting off with some positivity. So the first awesome thing is that despite this story being kind of sold to you as a romantic book or a love story, it's actually not at all. It's not sappy at all. The love between the two characters, Obenze and Ifemelu, is very genuine, but that's not actually what the book's about. It's more so about the adjustments she kind of had to make coming to the States. Her relationship with other people as well, and then her getting adjusted to living somewhere totally different and then being black for the first time. Is how she kind of describes it. Feeling black for the first time, coming from a country where everybody's black to coming up to America, which is a very racist country, can be kind of a jarring experience, and the book doesn't hold back on that. It focuses a little bit on everything. There is a love story kind of going on here, but it's intertwined with kind of the other themes. I would say there's more focus on her either adjusting to American life or just living in America over this relationship she has with this man. That comes back later, but that's not really the whole theme. The second thing I would say is awesome about this book is that it's not predictable. In fact, even on the last page, very rarely can you say this about a book. The last page, there are 588 pages in this book. Or, yeah, even on the last page of the book, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And like the last sentence of the book kind of concludes everything, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was surprised. I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen. Everything has been so honest and straightforward with these characters, and they feel like real people, that I wasn't sure how it was going to end. It felt like real life a lot of the times. Which kind of leads into my third reason that this book was awesome, was that the characters feel realistic. Especially Ifemelu. She is our main character for the majority of the book. And as a female character, it's really interesting to see that she's flawed. Not necessarily in a goofy way. Like in bad fiction, they love to have the hero, the heroine who's clumsy. That's considered like her flaw or something. But here she actually has some legit flaws. Some of them have to do with esteem. Some of them have to do with like her making bad choices. Ones I questioned and said, "What are you doing? Like, why would you do that?" Just like real problems. Like she feels like a real person that you know. Lots of things with her, it's like, okay, I can understand that, But then there are times when she does things that I don't understand. And I think, okay, I wouldn't have done that. But this kind of goes with her being flawed. She feels like a real person. And especially, and it's the same could be said for Obinze, which is the male character. Not as much, but I'm going to go into that later, into the not so awesome things. But the third thing is that the characters feel flawed, they feel real. And not just her, but also the ones around her. They make mistakes, and they're not just like stereotypes or anything. There are no stereotypical characters in here. They all feel like real people. The fourth thing that is awesome about this book is the honesty about her coming to America. And the idea of, like, the concept of Americana, why the book is called Americana, is kind of the name they give to, like, Nigerians or to people from Africa who come to the States, and they get so used to, like, American life that when they come back to Nigeria, they become Americana or something like that. It's like, kind of like your whole, because you've lived in such a different place, you're from here, but you go there, and your whole experience, it changes and how you see things. There's this one part of the book where when she comes back to Nigeria, and that's not a spoiler, it happens in like the first couple pages, she tells you she's moving back. Obviously, that's going to come back up again. She was kind of of Americana because there are certain aspects that she was essentially spoiled, is what I think is the term. It's like you come to America, you kind of get spoiled, and then when you come back and you're like, oh, well, things in America are like this. We have this. They have food like this. And your friends will be like, oh, you're so Americana. The way that everything is dealt with feels very natural and real. It's honest about, one of my favorite things about it is her talking about, she calls herself and people who are like from not the States, the non-American black. So she's a non-American black, and there's this whole discussion that she does. The book has some blogs and stuff about how like coming to the States means that you're black. Now, it doesn't matter if you're from Nigeria. It doesn't matter if you're from the Caribbean. It doesn't matter where you're from. When you come to the States and you have brown skin or you're black, there's no specifics. You're black in America. Simple as that. And there's discussions about that. There's discussions about some of the things that are great about Nigeria, but some of the things that aren't so great. A lot of talk about the riots and how there's strikes at the universities and how students from Nigeria and people from Nigeria, it's not even so much about them wanting to leave their country, but kind of having to, if they want to get an education, if they want to like proceed in life and not wait for the universities to stop striking or closing down the schools because of riots or whatever. And that's why they go to the States. That's why she even went. She never really had big dreams of living in America, but she kind of had to if she wanted to get her education. But that was the fourth thing. I could talk about that all day. There's so much to talk about with this book. And it's a great book, I would say, for like any type of, if you do a book club or something, great book. It's a long read because it's almost 600 pages, but it's a great book. The fifth thing is the tone is usually pretty good in the book. There are moments that I laughed out loud, and didn't understand. I didn't expect it, honestly. I was like, why did that character say this thing out of almost nowhere? But that was hilarious. But it could also be serious too, as well. She's very witty. Chimamanda is very witty, and I really, really enjoyed reading her book. Like, her writing style was really engaging. I felt like I understood most of the time what she was talking about. Even when I didn't really relate to, being an immigrant or moving from one country to the States or anything, I felt like I understood, though, just hearing her experience. And I'm like, wow, I never really thought about it from someone who never lived here. Like, what does it mean to be a non-American black when I've been an American black my whole life, and how that experience is so different. One example is that she talks about things we consider racist here in the States towards black people, such as like black people loving fried chicken or watermelon. And there was like a discussion she had with someone where they said, they asked her, oh, do you like watermelon? And she was like, yeah, sure. And then this other kid said, oh, that's so racist. And we know, as American blacks, we know what that means. Like, we know why watermelon and fried chicken, whatever, is considered racist or considered a stereotype. But for her, who's never grew up in the States, never even heard that, didn't even know what he was talking about the whole time. That's like, I never thought that, I never really thought about that. So that was what I mean by the fact that it's so witty and it's so, relatable, and she writes it so well where you can understand why this character is the way she is and what her experience are. So the sixth thing about this book is I said that it is a bestseller. It's a book that's about an African experience. It's about an African coming to the America. It's not a book about slavery. It's not a book about heavy racism. It's not set in the 60s or anything like that. It's a book about these things. It's very honest and fresh, and yet it's still a bestseller. It's by an African author. You know, how many African authors are really famous here in the States and are making big grounds? The fact that this book kind of exists here and is so popular and everything is really awesome. And I'm so proud of this author I'm going to get her some of her other books eventually because I'm so busy, but I definitely want to read some of her other work. And I don't know her, and I probably will never meet her, but I'm proud of her for this. This is a good book. Like, it lives up to the hype, is what I would say. The seventh thing is it lives up to the hype. It's good, it's funny, it's energetic, it's a good book. Now it's time to get to the not so awesome things about Americana, which aren't bad. I wouldn't say they're not bad, they're just nitpicks or picks I have about the book. So the first thing I want to say is because this is considered kind of a semi-love story, dealing with the racism and prejudice in the States, and it's between these two main characters, Imfamulu and Abinze, and the focus is not equal between those two characters, and not even in a subtle way. The book just makes it seem like most of it's going to be about both of them, but the truth is it's mostly about Ifemulu. And I would say about 90% of this book is probably her point of view. And while that's good and interesting, there are times when I wanted to go back to what Obinze was doing, and I wanted to see what he was thinking. I mean, there's a couple passages with him. We find it's after a while. I didn't mark it, but I would say it's more than halfway through the book before we kind of find out what Obinze had been doing over the years while she was in the States. And I was like, when it was over and they went back to her, I was like, can we go back to him, please? Like, I kind of want to know. He had kind of a more tragic thing sort of going on. Let's go back to what he had. What was he going through? I didn't feel like, on top of that, because there wasn't an equal focus between those two, I didn't feel like I knew him as well as I knew her. Like, I couldn't predict either one of them like that. I didn't know them, but I didn't feel like I knew him. I didn't understand like what his flaws were, what were his weaknesses. I just kind of seemed to know him on a shallower level than I knew her. And I understand that she probably couldn't have divided it in half because this book probably would have been like 700 pages or so. I understood that, but it would have been nice if it was more balanced. I mean, it's a huge difference. It's like it really was like 90% of the book is in her point of view, what she's doing, what's going on in her life, and I felt like I had to know everything about her, but only had to know the basic summary of his life, and I would have wanted to hear more about what he was going on. But it's still good. The second thing that's not so awesome, and this is a small thing, but the description of the book really threw me off to what I was actually reading. So it says, that the two main characters are young and in love when they depart military ruled Nigeria for the West. She heads for America. She has to deal with being black for the first time, and then he hopes to join her, but he plunges into he ends up living in London, and it's not really what the book's about in a way. I mean, like I said, it kind of goes back to the love story thing, but it isn't really about that. And I was like, man, I didn't know where this story was. Maybe that helps with the unpredictability. I just thought I felt a little misled with that title. That's all. It's not a bad thing. It's just kind of like something I noticed. The third thing is that the third thing is that we're uncertain on how much time has passed. I felt that way many times in the book. Like, we know that she had lived in the States for 13 years, but a lot of the time that they were talking about what she was doing and stuff, when the author was talking about what she was doing, I wasn't sure how much time had passed. Like, she was in one relationship for, I guess, a couple years, but I wasn't sure how long, and then she was in another relationship for a couple years, Wasn't sure how long that was either. I don't think in terms of time. I kind of wish it kind of said, okay, for this amount of time she lived here, kind of thing. I was confused about the timeline of things. When she moves back to Nigeria, I'm kind of confused about that timeline. How long was she there? Up until she saw him again, kind of thing. But I mean, they do tell us at the end of the book some idea of how long she's been in Nigeria, maybe 2 years or something like that. It's, I mean, that kind of, sometimes I was just questioning, like, okay, how long was they doing such and such? I kind of wanted to know. That was just my personal preference. The the fourth thing is that in the book she has a lot of blogs. Her character Ifemelu makes blogs at one point of her career for a living. She blogs for a living, has her own website. But sometimes those blogs that she, and they're mostly about race and her experiences in the States and stuff. But sometimes they come out of nowhere, and I mean, like, the sentence will end, and then there'll be a blog, and the blog will be in a different type, so you know that's a blog, and it has nothing to do with what we were just talking about. It felt sometimes that basically the blogs felt like they were forced in sometimes, and I was like, that isn't really necessary. But I understood she probably just she wanted to put them in there, but just didn't know where, so she kind of had to force them in there somewhere. That's understandable. The next thing is that with some of the minor characters, I didn't remember some of them. I sort of like completely forgot they existed, and I literally would have to go back to like the beginning of the book or somewhere around there and find who this person is. Like when Ifemu moves back to Nigeria, she meets up with a friend who like really helps her out, like gives her a place to stay, all this kind of stuff. And we're supposed to feel emotionally attached to her, but I'm like, I sort of remember that name. Don't remember her at all though, because she must have been mentioned like chapter 1 or something. I was like, I don't remember that character at all. I was like, okay, I remember that name because it was an interesting name. Don't remember anything else, and I just kind of went with it. But there were minor characters in here. They're not a lot of minor characters. There's just so much focus on her and him separately, and they sort of have friends, but we don't really need to know their names too much at a time. That when we come back to focus on this one character, I'm like, oh, I don't remember that character though, and that certainly hasn't been mentioned in a while. So, yeah, that's just kind of like a nitpick. The last thing, that was really the last thing I had to say about the not so awesome. Those are just kind of like minor things I noticed reading this book. Is that there are things that they could have been cut out, or I just was like, not my preference. I don't really prefer a random character to come back out of nowhere and have kind of an important impact, and then disappears again. Yeah, that's okay. The last thing I want to talk about is sort of my neutral observations of the book. I think it's a really good book. I would recommend it to anybody, especially anyone who has dealt with anyone. I read that someone has said that if you're Nigerian and you read this book, it's going to be a totally different experience than if you're American reading this book. And I definitely believe that. I think even though I understood a lot of what she was going through and how it was described so well that I felt like I could even relate, it wouldn't be the same if I was actually going through that myself. And I think this book is for both of those people. It's for the person who likes to learn about it and the person who actually already went through it and might want to read it again. I think it's a good book to read twice, actually. I haven't read it twice. I've only read it once. But there are certain things I felt like, if I reread this twice, I might understand that a little bit more. Because a lot of things do happen out of order. So, like, the book starts with current day, then it goes back into the past, and then maybe you'll skip a little bit into the future, but not really into the present. There's a lot of skipping around and stuff like that, and I'm like, you know what? Probably if I read this again, I probably would stick with me more. I would remember that more. There's just so much to absorb with this book that I feel like you could read it twice. And yes, most of the book is completed in flashbacks, except like the last maybe 100 pages. So like 400 pages is mostly, I would say, the past, or like, oh, this is what she was doing 13 years, this is what he was doing, kind of thing. And then the present. The book does end in the present time. That's as far as a spoiler we'll get for you guys. So, but that's all I really had to say about this book. I really enjoyed this book. It was a great read. I would recommend it to anybody. It's a lot. It was a lot of fun to read too. I couldn't put it down most of the time. But I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.